Very good afternoon to all of you. We will have the first session of our new QEEE course today, which is concepts of fluid mechanics. That we recognize that this, unlike the other most other QEEE courses, will be of 4 sessions, each session of 2 hours each. So, uh, in each session we have designed some materials, and these lecture materials have already been uploaded in the system. So, today's topic is kinematics, and we will try to understand what is kinematics and why is kinematics important. Uh, Kinematics, as you understand, it refers to motion. So, in kinematics, what we are interested in is we are interested to study what is motion. uh, at the same time, we are not trying to correlate the motion with any forces. So, it is the motion that is of importance to us for kinematic understanding, and not the forces which are behind the motion. Now, to understand that why fluid kinematics is somewhat challenging to understand, we should appreciate that uh, for a solid, if you have particles making up a solid, then these particles may undergo motion and deformation, but the deformation will not be as severe as that of a fluid. So, for a fluid, it is very challenging to describe the motion of individual particles, because a fluid is a continuously moving and deforming medium. Therefore, it is important that instead of tracking individual particles in a fluid, we track a particular location in space, and we try to see what is the change in the characteristics of the flow parameters across that identified region in space. Accordingly, we give two descriptions. One is Eulerian description and another is Lagrangian description. So, we will start with so in Lagrangian and Eulerian approach, we will first try to learn what are these terms Lagrangian and Eulerian, and accordingly we will try to develop a mathematical framework for them. So, in Lagrangian approach, what we are doing is we are essentially trying to track individual particles. So, let us say that R0 is the position vector of a particle at time t0. Then the position vector of a particle at when it is at a time t at r is a function of initial position and the time. This is what is Lagrangian approach. Eulerian approach, instead of focusing on particles, we focus. So, this is a flow field. Flow field is a region where the flow is felt. In that, if you identify a point, then at this location the velocity is a function of the position and the time, where r is the position of the particular point. So, in the Eulerian approach or the so called control volume type of approach, we do not care about where from the particle has come and where it will go. So long as it is residing at this location, we are describing the velocity of the particle at that point, same as the velocity of flow at that point. So, that is where the Eulerian and Lagrangian descriptions merge. This is something which is very important and interesting. Lagrangian approach is particle based approach, Eulerian approach is position based approach, but when the particle is occupying that position, the particle based approach and the position based approach, they are essentially hinting the same description, which may be the velocity of flow at that point. So, velocity of flow at a point is nothing but velocity of a particle which is neutrally buoyant, that is having the same density as that of the flow placed at that location. So, with this little bit of introduction to the Eulerian and Lagrangian method, what I am going to do is I am trying to meticulously follow the notes that I have provided to you, because it will be easy for you to understand. So, so far we have so far I have considered uh, the page number 1 of the notes. So, if you have the notes with you, this is lecture 1, page number 1, and I have described the page number 1, what is there, what are the contents. Okay. So, we have described the Eulerian method and we have described also the Lagrangian method. We will be talking about uh, path lines, streak lines and streamlines. Again I am repeating that in this particular QEEE course, I am trying to make a little bit of change in the way in which I deliver the lectures. In some earlier QEEE courses, what I try to do is I try to present things independent of the lecture materials provided, and sometimes got a feedback that it then made the students little bit made it little bit difficult for them to follow the notes. So, what I am going to do for this QEEE course is that I am trying to meticulously follow the uh, notes, and I am trying to build up my written lecture notes, what I am going to do today based on the material that you already have in your hand. So, if you open up that material and try to follow what is going on in line with that material, it will be very easy for you to follow. Next is uh, I would like to discuss about some conceptual lines or imaginary lines in the velocity field, which will help you to visualize the flow. So, remember that in flow field there are no actual lines, but what you can do is you can imagine some conceptual or some imaginary lines which can give a description of motion. Some such lines are the following: streamlines, streak lines and path lines. Okay. So, remember these are imaginary lines, and therefore, these lines do not actually exist in the flow field. It is our imagination to discuss that how these lines actually help in visualizing the flow. Uh, Now, we will first start with streamline. What are streamlines? The definition is written in the notes, so I am not going to write it again here, but I am of course going to work out the mathematics which will help you to understand it better, but I am not going to write the descriptive things here. So, streamlines are imaginary lines in the flow field such that tangent to it at any point uh, determines the direction of the velocity vector at that point at that instant of time. That means streamlines can change with time. Only when it is a steady flow, that is the velocity at a given point is not changing with time, then of course the streamlines will not change with time. But if it is an unsteady flow, then of course the streamlines will change with time. So, now let me illustrate the idea that I just told you schematically. So, let us say that this is a streamline. So what I have just told is that if you consider a point, then velocity vector at that point is same as or is oriented in a direction which is tangent to the streamline. So if that be the case, let us also consider a, a vector which is differentially small position vector, say dr. Dr is a position vector of 2 points of one point really relative to another point when both the points are located on the streamline. Now if you make dr differentially small, it is so small that the points 1 and 2 which are essentially connected by this dr almost merge on each other, then dr by definition becomes tangent to the streamline. That is the definition of a tangent. Tangent is essentially the limiting version of a chord. So when you make this dr tending to 0, then it essentially becomes a tangent. So because dr is a tangent and v is also a tangent, so what we can say is that dr cross v is a null vector. Why? Their directions are the same, so their cross product is a null vector. So now if you expand this using a determinant, by the way, normally for the components of the velocity we designate by UVW, U as the x component of velocity, V as y component of velocity and W as z component of velocity. So dr cross V is a null vector. This means I am expanding the determinant. So if you do this, then from here what you get is that 3 components of this vector, they are individually 0. That means this is 0, this is 0 and this is 0. Therefore, you can write Ex by u is equal to dy by v. This is from basically this equation, and from the other equations that you can write, for example, from this equation equal to dz by w. So this we call as equation of streamline. Equation of streamline. So what, and another concept related to streamline is if you have a bunch of streamlines, then you can consider or you can construct an imaginary tube that envelops the bunch of streamlines, and that is called as a stream tube. So these are some related terminologies we have covered up to page number 2 of the lecture note. The next point that I am going to discuss is path line. It is nothing but basically the Lagrangian description. So, Lagrangian description means that path line is basically the locus of an identified fluid particle, as simple as that. Then next concept is streak line. Streak line by definition is something like this. It is a locus of all such particles now which at different earlier instants of time passed through a common point. So, let us say that this is a point through which we inject a colored dye. If we inject a colored dye through this point, then let us say that we inject a blue colored dye. So, now if we see a blue line like this, what does this blue line indicate? It indicates that there are particles on this blue line which at some instant of time pass through this point of dye injection. If not so, how would it look like blue? It would look like blue because this particle at some point of earlier time passed through the point of dye injection. So, now if you connect all such particles, what you get is the streak line. So, streak line is a line which is very important for flow visualization. That is, whatever, if we inject a colored dye in a flow field, then whatever line that we see in the flow field is essentially as a consequence of the streak line. So, we have covered up to page number 3, and then what I will do is I will straight away go to example 1.1, which is there in page number 4 of your lecture notes, and uh, we will try to solve the problem so that it becomes understandable to you. So, example 1.1. So, let me show you the problem. The velocity components in a two dimensional flow field are given as follows: u is equal to x into 1 plus 2t, v equal to y, and w equal to 0. A colored dye is injected uh, at the point 1 comma 1 in the flow field at t equal to 0. So, the first part of the problem is find the equation of a colored line visible in the flow field at t equal to 1 as a consequence of dye injection, and number 2, find the locus of a fluid particle that passes through the point A at t equal to 1. So, let us try to solve this problem. So, let us see what is given. So, u is equal to x into 1 plus 2t, this is the x component of velocity, v is equal to y, and w is equal to 0. The point of dye injection, this, let us say this point A is 1 comma 1, and the dye is injected starting from time equal to 1, a colored line is seen like this maybe. So, what is the equation of this line? This is essentially, the question is, what is the equation of streak line? Okay. So, now let us try to do that. U equal to dx dt. What is this? This is a Lagrangian description. Remember, velocity at a point is same as velocity of a fluid particle which is neutrally buoyant with the flow at that point. So, that is why we have written u equal to dx dt. So, now if we integrate it, what will be the limits of integration? The limits of integration, let us say that at x equal to at t equal to 0, the particle location is given t equal to not always 0, but at t equal to 0, and then it goes on t equal to 0 0.1, 0 0.2, 0 0.3, in this way the final t is t equal to 1. So, instead of using t equal to 0 as a fixed injection time, we consider a variable injection time Ti with Ti between 0 to 1, because the dye injection is a continuous process, and at that instant you have x equal to 1, and at t equal to t, x equal to x. So, this gives ln of x is equal to this one at time equal to t. So, what is the t given in this problem? T is given as 1 second. So, ln x is equal to 2 minus Ti minus Ti square. Similarly, v is equal to dy dt is equal to y. So, integral of dy by y is equal to integral of dt. Therefore, what we can write, ln y is t is 1 second is 1 minus Ti. So, now you have two equations with Ti as the unknown parameter. So, if you eliminate Ti, you will get the equation of the streak line. Part B, find the locus of a fluid particle that passes through the point A at time equal to 1. The same velocity field, so u equal to dx dt is equal to x into 1 plus 2t, and v is equal to dy dt is equal to y. So, now if you integrate it, see, it is the integration limit where the evaluation of streamline streak line and path line will be different. So, let me separate the variables. So, if you separate the variables now, you will see that at t equal to 0, now here t is 0 not Ti, because we are identifying a fixed particle which at time equal to 0 pass through a point x equal to 1, and at t let us say it is x. So, similarly at t it is y. So, what we can say is ln x is equal to t plus t square, and ln y is equal to t. Now, you can eliminate t, get the path line. You can clearly see that the path line and streak line, they are different, and one of the reasons why they are, fundamental reasons why they are different, is that the flow, unsteady flow means you can clearly see that the velocity at a given location is a function of time. But if the flow was steady, what would have happened? If the flow is steady, then this is something that would have happened. Let us say that there is a particle which is injected at the cross point. That particle will come at the new cross point. So this is P0, this is P1, similarly this is P2, this is P3, like that. Okay. So the locus of the particle is this. Now if the flow is steady, then whatever particles are injected at the point P0, they will be constrained to move in the same direct in this along the same line. So this becomes streak line. So path line and streak line become identical. Not only that, at every instant of time, the tangent to this will represent the velocity. So this will also become the streamline. So we can conclude from here that for steady flow, streamlines, streak lines and path lines are identical. Okay. I am again repeating, for steady flows, streamline, streak line and path line are identical. So we have covered up to page number 5 in the note. Then we will discuss about, so far we have discussed about velocity, position and velocity. Next we will discuss about acceleration, which is in page 6 of my notes. Let us say that u is the x component of velocity. This u is a function of what? The position of the point where u is the velocity and the time. Let us say there is a particle which is located at that point x comma y comma z, and that particle has velocity v, which is ui plus vj plus wq. Now let us try to discuss that if the same particle has now gone to a different point, x plus delta x, y plus delta y, p plus z plus delta z. The interesting thing about this is that the time has also changed by this time, from time t to time t plus delta t, and at that new location let us say that v plus delta v is the velocity of the particle. So its x component u plus delta u is equal to u plus u being a function of all these, what we are doing is we are expanding this in the Taylor series. So we have written u as a function of x, y, z and time are the first order terms in the Taylor series, and we have neglected the higher order terms. So then what we can do is we can write acceleration along x as limit as delta t tends to 0, u plus delta u minus u divided by. So this is the basic definition of acceleration of a particle. This you can write limit as delta t tends to 0, you can argue that why are we not writing the higher order terms in the Taylor series. If you do this operation, the higher order terms in the Taylor series will contain some additional delta x, delta y, delta z, delta t, and if you take the limit as delta t tends to 0, all those terms will be vanishingly small and they will go away. That is why we have not retained higher order terms in the Taylor series. Now we will write this term first. So these two get cancelled, so this becomes del u del t. Then this term, limit delta t tends to 0, delta x by delta t, this is what? This is actually the Lagrangian description. As we are taking delta t tends to 0, the Lagrangian and Eulerian descriptions are merging. That is, the particle description at a point is giving the same information as that of the velocity of flow at that point. Therefore, we can write this as u. Similarly, with the limit as delta t tends to 0, this as v and this as w. So this is so what we can see here that acceleration has two types of component. One is an unsteady component or temporal component, another is the convective component. So why are these components there? First of all, a flow can accelerate if the velocity at a point is changing with time. However, even if its velocity at a point is not accelerating with time, it can accelerate in a sense that it can, the particle can by a time interval go to a new point, find a new velocity, and that is how it can have a change in velocity. Acceleration along x, it is not as simple as the simple straightforward ordinary derivative of the x component of velocity with respect to time. It combines both spatial effect and temporal effect. To summarize, it combines the effect that at a given point the particle velocity would have changed with time even if the particle had not moved, but it also takes into account that by a given time a particle may have moved to a new location where it finds a new velocity. So that is why this acceleration we call, we give it a symbol total derivative of velocity. Total derivative of velocity, capital D dt, takes into account both spatial and temporal effect. Similarly, acceleration along y is total derivative of v and acceleration along z is the total derivative of w. So we can draw an analogy by noting some very interesting thing. For instance, at a given point the velocity may not be a function of time but a fluid may have acceleration. This is the very basic difference between Eulerian and Lagrangian description. These equations are essentially Eulerian description. At a given point the velocity might not be a function of time, this term might be 0, but these terms may be non-zero. So the net effect is that acceleration may be non-zero although the time dependent term is 0. On the other hand, even if the velocity is changing with time, the fluid may be having 0 acceleration. How it is possible? For example, let us say that this term is plus 5 units, this term is minus 5 units. Example. So sum total of these is 0, but still velocity at a given location is a function of. So, because of this peculiar behavior of Eulerian description, this is what commonly might happen. So, we have covered up to page number also page number 7, which illustrates page number 6, and next what we will do is we will consider uh, translation and rate of deformation and rotation. So, how a fluid element evolves with time. So, the first example is translation without any deformation, and this is given in page number 8 of the note. So, if you see here that there is a fluid element, for convenience a rectangular fluid element is taken. This fluid element is evolving only the translation as you are allowing time. So, this is a particular type of evolution of a fluid element which will normally not happen. A fluid element will normally try to have a change in the angles, and also it may be possible that the fluid element will have change in volume. So, to understand what is the change in volume, what we will do is we will try to first consider linear deformation of a fluid element. For simplicity, let us consider a two dimensional fluid element. We could as well consider a one dimensional element because we are interested about the change in length delta x. The length of the fluid element along x. Over a period of time delta t, let A go to a new position A prime and B go to a new position B prime. So, what is A prime? Let us say velocity x component of velocity, this is the x direction, x component of velocity at the point A, let us say it is u. So, this is u into delta t. Similarly, x component of velocity here at the point B is u plus del u del x to delta x plus higher order terms that I am not writing anymore into delta t. So, the change in AB is the difference between these two. So, del u del x so change in length by original length per unit time, that is the rate of change of length. So, if you divide it per unit length, it becomes division by delta x, per unit time division by delta t. So, this becomes del u del x. So, this is the linear strain along x. Similarly, now the question is that what is the change in volume? To calculate the change in volume, what we can do is, what is first we calculate the old volume. What is the new volume? Change in length per unit time is delta del u del x. So new volume is new delta x times new delta y times new delta z. What is new delta x? This into new delta y okay. So change in volume, let us calculate. I am taking a fresh page to calculate because it can be little bit lengthy. So change in volume, minus this. So if this is the change in volume, let us calculate this. Now always for calculating such lengthy expressions there is a simple trick. So what we do is we first consider this product. So delta x, delta y. Now you have 1 plus 1 into this plus this into this plus the final term this into this is of the order of delta t square, which is of higher order. So we are not considering that. So now we are multiplying these two terms together. That means this full term with this full term 1 plus, so this entire thing multiplied by 1, then this term multiplied by 1, the other terms will be of the order of delta t square, that will be higher order. So this becomes, so this term gets cancelled with this, so change in volume per unit volume per unit time. What is this? Change in volume per unit volume and per unit time. This is nothing but the rate of volumetric strain. In vector calculus, this nothing but the divergence of the velocity vector. So, how it is written? This Nabla operator, which looks like del, is I del del x plus j del del y plus k del del z, and V is Qy plus Bj plus Wk. So, if you make a dot of these two, this becomes del u del x plus del v del y plus del w. Now, I tell you a very interesting thing. When is a fluid flow considered to be incompressible? A fluid flow is considered to be incompressible when there is no change in volume of a fluid element. This is very straightforward. Incompressible, the English word essentially means that it cannot be compressed or expanded, whatever. So, there is no change in volume. That means that what we have written here, it is not referred to uh, any density as a property, but it is something which is referring to a pure kinematic constraint, that there is no change in volume. So, this is called the condition for incompressibility. So, for incompressible flow, the divergence of the velocity vector, this nabla dot v, is equal to 0. It does not matter whether density is a constant or a density is a variable, which we will see at the moment. In a moment, the more important fact is that there is no change in volume of a fluid element. We will see subsequently, and keep this in mind, that we have not derived this condition of incompressibility from a density point of view, and then we will see that there may be a possibility when the density is not a constant, but still the flow is incompressible. This is called as variable density incompressible flow, and we will give a physical example of that as well when we learn. So, we have covered up to uh, page number 9 and page number 10, partly page number 10 of the lecture notes. We will be considering the angular deformation and rotation of fluid element. Let us say, see, angular deformation and rotation, for this we can consider a two dimensional analysis. Why a two dimensional analysis is good enough? The reason is that uh, rotation with respect to an axis, say z axis, can be perceived as rotation in the xy plane. Angular deformation also can be perceived in the similar way. So, let us say that there is a fluid element ABCD, which after a time in of delta t gets deformed into a new configuration. This is any arbitrary configuration where A comes to A dash, B comes to B dash, C comes to C dash, and D comes to D dash. The important parameters that dictate this deformation are as follows. So, if we consider a horizontal line through A dash and a vertical line through B dash, we can perceive these two angles delta alpha and delta beta, which are deviations from the x and the y axis. Let us try to characterize that. So, now for example, let us try to characterize the angle delta alpha. So, what is this displacement, vertical displacement from A to A dash? This is V into delta t. What is the vertical displacement from B to B dash? If V at A is V, then what is V at B? Remember, these two points are located at delta x apart. So, at the point B, the velocity, y component of velocity is V plus del V del x into delta x. Why del V del x? It is del V del x because from A to B, when you have gone, you have made a change in x, and that is what is the effect that comes into the picture for changing the V. So, it is the change in V due to the change in x. Okay. So, this one, what we can write is that now we can make a simple geometrical construction. I will make this construction here. So, we complete a right angle triangle A dash E dash B dash. So, why that right angle triangle? Because from there we will calculate tan delta alpha, that is B dash E dash by A dash E dash. So, B dash E dash is what? The difference in these two. So, V plus del V del x into delta x into delta t minus V delta t. Again I am neglecting higher order term. This I am not continuously telling, but I am neglecting the higher order. Del V del x delta x delta t, and A dash E dash again is delta x plus some higher order change. So, in the limit it is delta x. Now, if we take the limit as delta t tends to 0, tan delta alpha, in that small limit it becomes delta alpha, and if you divide by delta t, this delta t, it becomes del V del x. That means we can write that this angle, rate of change of angle delta alpha with respect to time delta t, that is alpha dot, is del V del x. Similarly, beta dot is del u del y. So, now we will define something which is the first definition is rate of deformation or rate of shear deformation. What is the rate of deformation or rate of shear deformation? This is the rate of change of angle between two line elements which were originally perpendicular. So, these two, for example, were line elements which were originally perpendicular. Now, their angle is 90 degree minus delta alpha minus delta beta, that is this angle. So, the rate of change, the change of angle is delta alpha plus delta beta. So, rate of change of angle is alpha dot plus beta dot. So, that is del u del y plus del v del x. Similarly, we define as angular velocity with respect to the z axis half of, see why such a peculiar definition. Such a definition we are using because, see, as per this diagram we have considered alpha dot as anti-clockwise, which is positive, beta dot as clockwise, which is negative. So, that is why basically we have taken average of the angular velocity of two fluid elements that were originally perpendicular. So this is half of del v del x minus del u del. This is defined as angular velocity with respect to z axis. So now we will extend this for a three-dimensional situation. So we have covered up to page number 10 of your lecture notes. Then we come to page number 11. Even page number 11 also we have covered. Let me see, we have covered up to what extent. So let us come to, if you look at this expression, equation number 1.18, this is what we derived the last, that is the angular velocity omega in the xy plane is half of del v del x minus del u del y. So omega with respect to the z axis is half of del v del x minus del u del y. Similar expressions we can derive for angular velocity with respect to x axis and angular velocity with respect to y axis. So in general we can write the angular velocity in the ij plane is half of del uj del xi minus del uy del xj. This is called as index notation, where if we are using one index, then the index I or j indicates the component. So ui indicates the ith component of the velocity vector. So I is equal to 1. So I is equal to 1 I am writing here, implies x axis, I is equal to 2 implies y, and I is equal to 3 implies z. So x1 means x, x2 means y, and x3 means z. Similarly, u1 means u, u2 means v, and u3 means w. Okay. So you can see that a generalized gradient of ui with respect to xj, this can be written as a sum of uh, this rate of deformation related component and the angular velocity related component. So why this is important is because it is only this part that can give rise to stress, but the rotation part will not be able to give rise to stress. This is one point. The other point is that in a very compact form you can write the angular velocity as half of curl of the velocity vector. See, the curl is given by this determinant nabla cross v. So I j k, first is the nabla operator del del x, del del y, del del z, and v its components u v w. So if you expand this, then actually each of these becomes twice of this. Uh, the angular velocity becomes half of this along with respect to x axis, half of this with respect to y axis, and half of this with respect to z axis. With this description on the deformation and rotation of fluid, let us work out example 1.2. Okay. This is page number 13. So example 1. A two-dimensional velocity field is given by this. Find out the strain rates, the rotational velocity and vorticity. So strain rates, it is a very simple use of the formula. So strain rates epsilon dot x is del u del x, this is A, epsilon dot y is equal to del v del y is equal to minus A, and there is no z component. The rate of volumetric strain is del u del x plus del v del y is equal to 0. The rate of shear strain del v del x plus del u del y, this is 2b. the rotational velocity omega z is half del v del x minus del u del y, which is minus b, and vorticity with respect to the z axis So, this just illustrates some basic definitions, how to apply these basic definitions to find out relevant kinematic parameters. So, this is quite straightforward and simple. The next agenda item that we will consider is very important. This is called as conservation of mass. So, we will consider the conservation of mass as a very fundamental consideration, because no matter how complex or how simple the flow field is, it should satisfy the conservation of mass. With this understanding, what I will do is, I will try to uh, derive an expression for the law of conservation of mass, a mathematical expression for using a control mass approach and another a control volume approach. So, control mass system approach. This is approach number 1. So, let us say that m is the mass of a given amount of fluid or given fluid element, which is rho into V. I am writing V in this way because uh, the normal V we write for velocity. So, this is a different symbol that I am using for volume. Rho is density. So, we can write ln m is equal to ln rho plus ln V. Now, take the total derivative. So, 1 by m dm dt is equal to 1 by rho d rho dt plus 1 by v dv dt. Now, 1 by m dm dt, this is 0, this is law of conservation of mass. Control mass system is by definition a system whose mass cannot change. Okay. So, this is dm dt equal to 0. Then what is this? This we have just studied, the volumetric deformation, rate of volumetric strain. This is divergence of velocity vector. So, for incompressible flow, since divergence of velocity is equal to 0, that means you must have d rho dt equal to 0, which is very very important. So, for incompressible flow, what we are telling essentially is that total derivative of density is equal to 0. That means so does it necessarily mean that rho has to be a constant? It need not be. It may so happen that rho is a function of time, but sum total of these terms is 0. I am giving you a practical example. Let us say that there is a volume in which there is some solid metal and we are heating this. So if we are heating this solid metal, then what will happen? With heating, its volume may change. For example, for many metals, you will see that on heating they will. So after heating, when the solid becomes liquid, this volume cannot accommodate that liquid because the liquid is of greater volume. So it will be escaping from all sides. So there will be a convective term that is created, and there will be a time dependent term, sum total of these terms, that will be 0. So the very important concept that we have learnt just now is that incompressible flow need not necessarily mean that density is a constant, but if density is a constant, then this is trivially 0. That trivial condition is called as constant density flow. Now let us go ahead with this derivation. So we are left with 0 equal to, so this is only for incompressible flow, but for all flows both of these terms are there. So you have 1 by rho d rho dt plus divergence of velocity equal to 0. That means, so d rho dt we are writing del rho del t plus u del rho del x plus v del rho del y plus w del rho del z plus rho into divergence of velocity, rho del u del x plus rho del v del y plus rho del w del z equal to 0. So now if we combine various terms like combine u del rho del x with rho del u del x, v del rho del y with rho del v del y, and w del rho del z with rho del w del z, we are left with del rho del t plus del x of rho u plus del y of rho v plus del z of rho w is equal to. So terms with the same color, they are combined together. This is the famous continuity equation, del rho del t plus del dot rho v equal to 0. In books, this control mass system based approach is not very commonly followed. So we will consider a second approach which is called as control volume based approach. This approach is given in page number 16 of the lecture note. Control volume based approach. So in control volume based approach, what we are trying to do is as follows. Let us consider a rectangular control volume. The sides of this control volume, so this is x axis, this is y axis, this is z axis. The sides are delta x, delta y and delta z. Now what we are trying to use for this control volume, so across this control volume some mass is entering and some mass is leaving. So what basic mass conservation principle we are going to apply is m dot in minus m dot out is the time rate of change of mass within the control volume. For example, let us say that 10 kg per second is the rate at which mass enters the control volume, and 4 kg per second is the rate at which mass leaves the control volume. So 10 minus 4 is equal to 6 kg per second is the rate at which mass is changing inside the control volume. So now m dot x plus delta x and m dot x are respectively the mass flow rates over the shaded faces that I have considered, and this example I am taking just to illustrate that what is the rate of in minus out along x. I am not drawing the corresponding entities for the transport along y and z just to maintain clarity in the figure. So m dot x minus m dot x plus delta x, what is this? This is what we have to evaluate. Now m dot x plus delta x, we can write m dot x plus higher order terms in the Taylor series. See, Taylor series expansion is very important because for almost all derivations you can see that we are following that. So we can write that m dot x plus delta x or rather m dot x plus delta x minus m dot x is equal to, so what is m dot x? M dot x is rho u into this shaded area. Shaded area is delta y delta z. Therefore, x minus m dot x plus delta x is del x of rho u into delta x delta y delta z by plugging in this here. So this is m dot in minus m dot out along x. So m dot in minus m dot out means that along x plus along y plus along z. So del x of rho u, there will be a minus sign here because we have written m dot x minus m dot x plus delta x. So this is minus. Here it was m dot x plus delta x minus m dot x, that is why plus, the opposite thing is minus. So this will be minus of and then what is this term? Del t of m of the control volume. This is del t of rho into delta x delta y delta z. So this is delta x delta y delta z into del rho del t. So this is equal to delta x delta y delta z to del rho del t. Higher order terms will be anyway 0 as you take limit delta x delta y delta z all tends to 0. So this will lead to del rho del t plus del x of rho u plus del y of rho v plus del z of rho w is equal to 0. This is the continuity equation. Okay. So we have derived the continuity equation, one from control mass system approach, another is from control volume approach, and we have arrived at the same form. irrespective of what particular approach we have followed. Now the next point is that although we have uh, followed a particular approach for uh, the conservation of mass, what we must keep in mind is that for conservation of mass we also use another form, and that very common or popular form is that A1 V1 equal to A2 V2. So this is my common experience in any interview or any type of viva voce examination. If I ask that what is the continuity equation, invariably there is a tendency of saying A1 V1 equal to A2 V2. Of course that is not correct, that is not incorrect, but we have to keep in mind that we have intrinsically started with the differential form of the continuity equation. So we must understand that what are the conditions that lead to this famous A1 V1 equal to A2 V2 form. So that we will do next. So one dimensional cross sectionally averaged form of the continuity equation. So let us say that assume steady flow. Let us say there is a variable area conduit, and let us say that the area of this is A1 and the area of this is A2. Now we assume that it is a steady flow. So your continuity equation will boil down to divergence of rho v equal to 0. Now we integrate this over the volume of the fluid. We do that. Now we use the divergence theorem in vector calculus. So this is a area, this is an elemental area vector. So this can be written as dA with n cap, where dA is the magnitude of the differential area and n cap is a unit vector normal to that. So for this area n cap is in this direction, for area this n cap is in the direction shown. N cap is outward unit normal vector to the area. I am repeating again, n cap is outward unit normal vector. Divergence theorem and write over 1 for this surface and this surface the integral will not come. Can you say why? The integral will not come because the normal component of velocity, see this is essentially the normal component of velocity of the surface. The normal component of velocity is 0 over these surfaces because fluid cannot penetrate through this solid boundary. This is called as no penetration boundary condition. So because of no penetration boundary condition, fluid cannot penetrate through this solid boundary, so this will be equal to 0. For these surfaces. So essentially this will be the also assume rho as constant. Not only that, what is V for one, that is ui, what is eta cap for one, this is, if this is the x axis, the unit vector is minus I, this is negative x direction. Similarly here V is u and eta is I. So if you take all these into account, you will have integral u dA over section 1 minus plus integral of u dA over section 2 is equal to 0. By average velocity definition, this is u average 1 into A1 and this is u average 2 into A2. So we can write u average 1 into A1 is equal to u average 2 into A2. So this is A1 V1 equal to A2 V2, that famous formula. Remember that V1 and V2 are not velocities at points 1 and 2. These are velocities cross sectionally averaged over sections 1 and 2. So this is what I have covered in page number 17 of the lecture notes partly, and then partly up to page number 8. Then we will wind up the lecture of today with a couple of concepts. One is stream function, another is velocity potential. The next 15 minutes or so we will spend for this. So let us take an example of two dimensional plus incompressible flow. So you have the volume conservation given by this equation. So now if you define u is equal to del psi del y and v is equal to minus del psi del x, then what we can say is that this equation is automatically satisfied. This psi as a function of x y is called as stream function. Now the question is, out of so many possible names, why the name stream function? The reason is that let us consider d psi. So by definition, this is minus v dx plus u dy. So along a streamline, remember that we have found out that equation of streamline is dx by u is equal to dy by v. That means minus v dx plus u dy equal to 0. That means d psi equal to 0. That means psi equal to constant. So because psi is equal to constant along a streamline, psi is also called as a stream function. So that is covered by page number 18 of the lecture notes. Now in page number 19 of the lecture notes, I have detailed about the physical significance of stream function. Okay, and this is little bit descriptive. I want to give you the summary of what it is. So for that, you go to page number 20. Page number 20, you find that there are two streamlines. One is psi equal to constant, another is psi plus d psi equal to constant. So we have considered an arbitrary line joining these 2 points, and it can be shown that the elemental flow rate between these two is nothing but the difference between the two stream functions. So, the flow between two streamlines can be related in some with suitable adjustment of dimensions with the corresponding differences in stream function between the values of the stream functions of the two streamlines. So, that is a physical interpretation of streamline. Remember, these physical interpretations are up to our imagination understanding, but mathematically the stream function was introduced not to give a physical interpretation, but to parameterize the two dimensional incompressible form of the continuity equation. The next concept is velocity potential. This is given in the bottom of page number 20 and then also in page number 21, concept of velocity potential. Let us say that you have irrotational flow. What is irrotational flow? Irrotational flow is a flow where there is no angular velocity. That means curl of velocity vector is a null vector. There is a vector calculus identity this is an identity, this is true for all. Therefore, if you compare these two, we can say that for irrotational flow V is grad phi. V can be expressed as gradient of a scalar function. This scalar function phi called as velocity potential. So, a scalar component wise u is equal to del phi del x, v is equal to del phi del y, w is equal to del phi del z. Okay. So, this is from this equation. Now, let us consider an interesting case when both stream function and velocity potential are defined. What is that case? That case is two dimensional incompressible and irrotational flow. So, example, two dimensional incompressible irrotational flow. So, now d psi so this is minus v dx plus u dy. That means for psi equal to constant you have dy dx is equal to v by u. Similarly, d phi so this is u dx plus v dy. This means for phi equal to constant, how do you get this? Psi equal to constants mean d psi equal to 0. From here you get this. Similarly, for phi equal to constant, you have dy dx. If you set this equal to 0, it is equal to minus u by v. So, you can see that dy dx for phi equal to constant and dy dx for psi equal to constant is equal to v by u into minus u by v. So, when u and v are not equal to 0, this is minus 1 if u v not equal to 0. So, that means phi equal to constant and psi equal to constant lines are orthogonal to each other. They are, if they intersect, let us say these are this is psi equal to C1, this is psi equal to C2, this is psi equal to C3. Similarly, this is phi equal to C1, this is phi equal to C2, this is another C1, C1 dash, C2 dash, C3 dash. So they are orthogonal, meaning that if you draw a common tangent at the point of intersection, they are 90° with each other. But if the u and v are 0, then of course this analogy cannot be drawn. So then such a case is an exceptional case or a case of singularity when this theory does not work, that is called a stagnation point. A stagnation point is a point where the flow is stagnated. So the velocity is 0 and you cannot say that the streamlines and equipotential lines are orthogonal to each other. So streamlines and equipotential lines are orthogonal to each other everywhere in the flow field except for the stagnation point. Another related remark is that this network of lines with phi equal to constant and psi equal to constant lines, this is also called as a flow net. So flow net is a terminology that discusses about this network type of lines formed by the imaginary lines phi equal to constant and psi equal to constant. So we have come to the end of this lecture, and purposefully I do not want to solve the last example, example 1.3, that is the only the last element of the lecture notes, and this I want to leave on you as a homework. So example 1.3, the velocity field is given. Check whether the flow is incompressible or compressible, irrotational or rotational. If you if the flow is incompressible, obtain an expression for the stream function, and if the flow is irrotational, obtain an expression for the velocity potential. I have already worked out this problem, but I would expect that with the kind of theoretical background that we have given in today's lecture, it will be possible for you to solve this problem by yourself without looking into the solution. I would expect that you will be doing that, and in case you find some difficulty, tomorrow my first agenda will be to take up this example and take it further forward from there. So with this little bit of a note, we come to the end of today's session. In today's session, we have discussed mainly the kinematics. So what are the topics that we have covered? The Eulerian and Lagrangian description, different methods of visualizing the flow, that is streamline, streak line and path line. Then we have also discussed about uh, the acceleration of flow and the different types of deformation, the shear deformation, the volumetric deformation and the rotation. We have defined the angular velocity and the vorticity, and we have also uh, discussed about the continuity equation in the context of incompressibility, and we have derived the continuity equation from both control mass and control volume consideration. We have also defined two terminologies, stream function and velocity potential, and we have discussed about their relationships, and all these have been substantiated with examples, and I believe that this interaction was useful to you. You have to keep in mind that the volume of material that I have covered, normally in the regular lecture classes we take more number of lectures to cover this material, but we have to understand that QEEE course is not about exactly replicating the regular class lectures, but these are essentially to supplement the regular class lectures. Therefore, I hope that this lecture has been useful. My tutor, teaching assistant Shayan Das has been continuously responding to various chat questions that have been asked. So you might be wondering that who is the person who is giving you all the answers to the chat questions when I am actually teaching. He is my teaching assistant, Mr. Shayan Das, and I hope that his explanations have been useful uh, for you. And in case there are some doubts, towards the end of this lecture we will be having a live video type of interaction through which we will be interacting with questions and answers. but I believe that this interaction was useful to all of you. So, if you have any further questions, you can post. Otherwise, it has been a long session of 2 hours, and we would not mind in calling it a day today. So, there is a question that I am seeing in the chat. The question is there any relationship between linear and angular deformation? Unfortunately or fortunately not. Linear deformation is related to volumetric deformation, and angular deformation is related to shear deformation. So, we are not having any kind of relationship between linear and uh, shear deformation and angular deformation. The reason is, mathematically speaking, the linear deformation is related to the normal gradients, that is velocity gradient of x component of velocity along x, y component of velocity along y, z component of velocity along z. On the other hand, the angular deformation parameters depend on the cross gradients, that is gradient of u with respect to y or z, v with respect to z or x, w with respect to x or y. Since one is a normal gradient and another is a cross gradient, these two are not the same parameters, then of course these are not related to each other. There is another question, how velocity potential function UVW becomes positive. I do not understand this question. The velocity potential, like if you write uh, like let me come back to this slide. So you have curl of velocity equal to 0, so you can define V as grad of phi. Of course, you can also have minus of this equal to 0, so you could also define alternatively V is equal to minus grad phi. It is all the same, just sign convention you have to adjust appropriately so that it gives the physical meaning that you desire, but whether it is plus grad phi or minus grad phi, both will satisfy this definition. So either of this is fine. So if it is plus, plus for all these; if it is minus, minus for all. Question another: how is practical determination of rate of deformation and rotation of fluid element done? See, this is something where you have to use your maturity. Like nobody will catch a fluid element and see its angular deformation. So in practice, one can measure velocities, and velocities can be measured as a function of position. So once velocity can be measured as a function of position, that can be fitted in a mathematical form, and the suitable derivatives can be used to capture the rate of deformation. Next question, what is the difference? Okay, one example in civil engineering where velocity potential and stream function is to be calculated or whatever. See, it is not a question of civil engineering or mechanical engineering or aerospace engineering. I gave a physical interpretation of velocity of stream function and velocity potential again, like why these things are introduced. These things are introduced because the normally the velocities are expressed by three components u, v, w. These considerations are introduced so that number of parameters can be reduced to one. So no matter whether it is civil engineering or mechanical engineering or whatever engineering, if you want to reduce your number of parameters for analysis, you can use this psi or phi provided the corresponding assumptions are justified. That means for stream function it has to be two dimensional incompressible flow, and for velocity potential it has to be irrotational flow. So if these conditions are satisfied, you can use. Okay, so many thanks for setting this section very live with your questions and with your interactions. Thank you very much for attending today's program, and we will call it a day today, and tomorrow we will meet at 10 a.m. in the morning for the next session, which will be basically uh, addressed to the dynamics of inviscid flows. Thank you very much.